Greetings sailors, welcome back to World of Warships and a very bottom tier Warspite game. As you can see, this is pretty terrible matchmaking for me and the other tier 6s because alongside myself there's a Graf Spee on either team and the enemy team has a New Mexico. But I'd rather be in this than in the position of those Graf Spees right now because I at least have some pretty comfortable firepower. And of course the Warspite's got some other nice qualities going for it as well. But yeah, generally speaking, if you're going to be down tiered in a battleship, it's not quite as bad as being down tiered in a cruiser. So there's a bit of a bug with this replay, as you probably noticed. It looks like my turrets haven't fully come around when I'm firing, but no, that is just the replay. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. Unless somehow I've actually managed to hack the game engine to make the shells alter course mid-flight. But, you know, if I did that, I probably wouldn't be showing it off in a replay. So, that was a pretty good first salvo. Citadel even against that Tirpitz, and so therefore it must have been a plunging hit through the deck. There's no way that was a Citadel through the side armour. These 15-inch guns do still pack a reasonable punch. They've got pretty good accuracy, of course. I think I'd previously said, I mean, the Queen Elizabeth of course is now in the game, which I think a lot of people have skipped over, but I think I previously said that I don't think it did have the same Sigma, but I think it does have the same Sigma. It just doesn't have the same pen as the Warspite, I believe. Not that Warspite has fantastic pen for being a tier 6. I'm going by memory here. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think it does. I think it's better than the Bayern, though. Of course, you do still have that advantage, well, when you're top tier anyway, of having battleship guns that can overmatch other same tier and lower tier battleships. Hell, you can even overmatch the bows of tier 7 battleships with 15-inch guns, I think. Or am I thinking of 16-inch guns? See, I'm getting myself confused now. But either way, you know, this is pretty good firepower to have at this tier. And really my only limitation is the fact that I don't have a particularly great range. So far, it's not looking that good. It's not that good of a start. We're only actively contesting one cap. We've got that Leningrad capping B. We've got a couple of ships down towards A who are outnumbered. So theoretically, we have an advantage up here in C. But we're really not particularly pushing very hard at the moment. And this is one of those situations where I feel disinclined to be at the forefront of things just because I'm bottom tier and I know that my armour's not going to stand up that well. This and the Queen Elizabeth are not particularly tough ships. It's not bad armour per se, but for the other, you know, compared to the other tier 6 battleships, I think it's at the weaker end. So we've got the enemy destroyer ahead of us. Our Kigaro's clearly spotted them. If we can take them out, that would be pretty good. But it'd be quite nice if other people would, you know, shoot at him as well. But so far it looks like he's going to manage to make a getaway. So that's a little unfortunate, but never mind. What can you do? I don't think I had a captain in this that was spec'd for secondaries, because you can get it out to about, I want to say 7.3 kilometres. And it is quite useful in terms of secondaries, this. Although overall, I mean, this has got better secondaries and the Queen Elizabeth has better AA. I think overall, I actually quite like the Queen Elizabeth. I mean, this does turn better in the water. It's got the heel, it's got, I think, better AP penetration, but the Queen Elizabeth absolutely murders planes. And at least on EU, you're more likely to see mid-tier carriers than you are high-tier carriers. But even if you get into a tier 8 game, the Queen Elizabeth's AA, it buffs really well. We're talking, in terms of its long-range AA, almost as good as the Cleveland. It is basically the Cleveland of battleships at tier 6. I think it might even be the best long-range AA of tier 7 as well, although it does have stiffer competition in terms of the German battleships. But it's pretty good, is what I'm saying. So, yeah, and not a lot of people seem to realise that at this point either. So it is still occasionally hilarious going into even a tier 8 game and you get like a Shikaku or a Lexington, and with manual AA and BFT and flags, you can really shred their planes And they're not expecting it because they're not expecting you to have as good AA as, say, Cleveland. Although, of course, you don't get defensive AA, which is what makes the Cleveland really quite potent. So I've backed off trying to push in because really nobody else is trying to. And going in alone, trying to get in that cap, is just going to get me focused. So I'm not actually going to be able to cap. I'm just going to get focused really hard and burn a lot of health. And that's not really what I want to do, because the rest of the teammates up here seem to be particularly standoffish, particularly our Kagero. And I'm not the only one that is going to find our Kagero's performance a little bit lacking in this one. I don't know why our Kagero is at this point back here with us. They're not even trying to spot incoming torps. They're nowhere near the cap circle. I honestly couldn't tell you what this Kagero is doing. And that's pretty bad, because it means our only destroyer that's actively contesting anything is the Leningrad, who is currently alone in B. We've also now got a cyclone coming in, so this makes things even more interesting, because that means if we're trying to push at this point, by the time the Akatsuki gets spotted, they're going to be well within torpedo range. But at least it gives me a bit more warning, because they're not going to be dropping out of me from complete stealth. They've got to be pretty close to spot me, as I've got to be pretty close to spot them. So it kind of evens the playing field in a way. So I'm continuing to take a complete pounding here. The higher tier ships here seem completely disinclined to get stuck in any way, shape or form, and it's not looking that good, because we've now got another enemy destroyer coming up here as well. And hello torpedoes. Well, I've spotted those soon enough to hopefully be able to dodge those. There we go. And that said, 23 is also close enough for my secondaries to open up, so as long as they're spotted, we might even be able to finish them off. But I've also got to potentially worry about torps coming from that direction as well. So things have just gotten a little bit exciting. We have no cap circles, by the way. I mean, look how far behind we are right now. Yeah, this is one of those teams that, if you were top tier, you would maybe be able to do a bit more with. But bottom tier, it kind of ties your hands a bit. Not as much so as if I'd been in a cruiser, because I've got that Warspite heel, I've got those 15-inch guns. But I really was, you know, just waiting for those top tiers to start acting like they wanted to win this. And it's not looking like they do so far. It's looking like everybody's just wanting to be very passive and not risk their ships. So if this is going to be a comeback, it's going to have to be a heck of a comeback. So there's the Akatsuki's torps, which I've managed to successfully duke out of the way of. And as they're using smoke, I know I don't have to worry about more incoming, because they can't have both smoke and the reload booster. The New Mexico is also worryingly close in terms of being able to target my Citadel potentially, but of the ships aiming at me, they don't seem to be among them. So I'm actually taking a slightly risky turn here right now. Now the storm coming down has actually kind of worked in my favour, in that I've been able to get in the cap circle now, and it means enemy ships have to get a lot closer to actually do anything about it. But they're in the cap circle too. We're still not capping. So yeah, it's just all a bit messy right now. And of my teammates, well, the Kagero is up north somewhere, as is the Graf's Bay. The Miyoko is a bit closer and appears to be trying to just get around the edge of the cap circle to engage from the other side. But that's just left me and this York really in the middle, kind of taking all of the pounding. Although our Bismarck is finally starting to get engaged as well. But unless we cap soon, this is all going to be for nothing. And having taken that Citadel, well, I mean, I'm slightly better off than I'd be in a Queen Elizabeth. I can heal more of that damage back. And as you can see, actually, there's quite a big chunk that I can get back still with my next heal. But yeah, that was still a little bit painful. So there goes our Bismarck, who wasn't really any great shakes. In fact, our Tier 8 division generally wasn't any great shakes. We do still have, however, some other German battleships. But, well, look at the minimap, look at where they are. The Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst are really quite far from the action. They're not pushing any caps, they're just playing 100% defensively, and if this was a standard game, that would be fine. But this isn't a standard game, this is a domination game. We need cap circles. We've killed, however, a whole bunch of their ships, which has bought us some time in terms of victory points, and it has also meant that now, potentially, we can start capping. But we need to get a move on. Time is against us, just because they still have over double our victory points, and they still have the momentum, really. A lot of our ships are just in really odd places. I mean, look at the Kigero and the Graf Spee, literally in A10. I don't know what they're doing there, and I think, if I remember correctly, it emerges in the chat later on that somebody was trolling somebody else, and so yeah, they're basically fighting each other right now rather than the enemy team, and that means, like, even though the Graf Spee is maybe not a particularly great loss not being in the action, that destroyer hello and goodbye, Pensacola. Yes, that was a bit painful. Yeah, the Kigero not playing is actually hurting us. We've effectively only had one destroyer that's done anything in this game. So we've been 10 versus 12 effectively for quite a lot of this game. So unfortunately there goes the Myoko. Myself and the York, well, we don't want to be too close to this Tirpitz. I'd actually prefer it to be a Bismarck almost, because the Bismarck wouldn't have the torpedoes to worry about, and that's maybe why, instead of trying to get in close, which perhaps I could have, I choose the course of going the other way. Now, fortunately for me, the York has managed to land torpedoes, and I actually get the kill there with fire. And so that's quite nice. That's another battleship's worth of points. But time is slipping away from us quite rapidly at this point. There's still the Graf Spee to deal with, and the Kutuzov's turned up here as well, and there's a KGV coming in this direction. This is the last 3 enemy ships. I mean, if we could kill them quick enough, we could do this. But, well, it's effectively just me and the York, because the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst can't see anything right now. They're completely out of it. The Gneisenau isn't even going for the B cap. For some insane reason, they're going for the A cap. And so it's not looking good, especially as the York's just died. And this Graf Spee is well within torpedo distance. So, if I can kill this Graf Spee, maybe that'll be enough, but he's fairly healthy, so it would take him screwing up and giving me a broadside, you know, getting the kind of RNG I had with that Pensacola to actually do anything. Now, for some reason, the Kigero has at last chosen to come and get in the fight. I mean, we saw a little bit of action from them earlier on, and then just nothing. And at this point, I guess they goaded the Graf Spee into firing at them. I have no idea what happened between those two players, but the Graf Spee turned pink, and the Kigero lost most of their health. So either the Kigero went chasing after the Graf Spee for some imagined slight, or else they were trolling the Graf Spee and trying to get them to turn themselves pink. And either way, it hasn't been helping us win the game exactly, has it? So, yeah, I really do need to take down this Graf Spee, but unfortunately the KGV's turned up and is effectively full health. The Gneisenau has gone to B, but isn't actually in B. The Scharnhorst, I don't even know, and the Kigero's just managed to die, giving the enemy team extra points. So, you know, it wasn't even 10 versus 12, it was more like 10 versus 14, because the Graf Spee and the Kigero do seem to have been playing for the other side. So, a couple more hits in the Graf Spee, he's awfully low health. In retrospect, maybe I could have tried to get a bit more aggressive with the Graf Spee and taken him down, but that would have put me very close to that full health KGV. So that was it. I mean, I don't think we could come back from that. I think we just had too many useless teammates. But it just goes to show that even bottom tier, I mean, look at that score. That's ridiculous. Almost 1600 base XP on a loss. I did better than almost all of the entire enemy team, but it also highlights how useless most of our team were. The Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau, the top tier German battleships, that Kigero, so many bad players, and yet we almost won. Even so, you know, we came actually I think close enough that we could have done it. Maybe if a couple of those players had been a bit less useless. The Kigero especially, if they'd spent less time trolling the Graf Spee or vice versa. Maybe we could have done it. But as it was, no, just a few too many players were not pulling their weight. But even so, even being bottom tier, the Warspite was absolutely able to kick butt. And although there were one or two hilarious follies like that first one or deleting that Pensacola, for the most part it was just that fairly standard chipping away of health that you do in a battleship. You know, when you don't have lots of broadside things to shoot at. So yeah, I think that was a pretty decent game. Nearly 500,000 credits made on a loss is nothing to be ashamed about, definitely. So yeah, the Warspite, it holds up pretty good, especially compared to the Queen Elizabeth. I think the Queen Elizabeth has got its own gimmick going on, which is quite nice as well at times. So yeah, I think they both have a place. And if you skip past the Queen Elizabeth, well, maybe you might want to go back to it at some point and spec it for AA and then just watch all of those planes fall out of the sky. So hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can leave any comments below, you can hit that like button, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.